Hey everybody. Have you ever thought about working in the medical device industry, or are you in the industry and you're trying to understand how to progress? What's next? How do I get better? Do you need inspiration, a coach, guidance? There's never been a better time to work in the medical device industry, as the next 10 years will see an even greater demand for health across the world, and with the acceleration of technology in the space as AI and digital products are developed and approved for use. Welcome everyone to our MedTech Lives, in which we interview veterans of the medical device industry and learn about their career journeys, what they're proud of achieving or been involved in, and what were the challenges that they had to overcome. We'll also touch on different areas of the med device industry, illustrating the wide variety of careers in this wonderful industry. This podcast evolved from an annual MedTech Day that we used to provide for a major European business school. So without further ado, we are your hosts,
Sekurima
and Kash Ikram. Today, we are really honored to welcome John Monroe, who started this journey with us at the business university that I mentioned earlier. John Monroe has worked for over 3 decades in commercial activities in developing markets. He has worked for companies like Covidien, Medtronic, Edwards Life Sciences, Convatec, Cardinal Health, and currently Baxter. Today we'll be covering his experience of creating and communicating medical brands across the developing world. Welcome, John.
Hey, thank you.
Hi, John.
Hey, thank
Uh,
you. Hi.
let's just jump into it. And can you please tell us how you got into the industry and tell us a little bit about your journey in the industry so far?
Well, I kind of came into the industry by accident. I was a pharmacist in the basement, no windows, no fun, no room for creativity as a pharmacist. I was mixing the chemotherapy.
In the
And what
basement,
happened
in the hospital, right?
in the
Not at home.
hospital,
Okay.
not at
Yeah.
home, no. And what happened was my colleague sitting next to me, he
Yeah.
said, maybe I was 26, and he said, "Today is my 50th birthday, and I've been working here for 20 years." And I said,
Wow.
"Okay, I gotta try something new. I I can't do this for 20 years." And so
Amazing.
then I went into clinical trials,
Right.
and I was setting up clinical trials uh, in Europe, and actually that was a lot of fun. That got me out of the basement. And one of the things that I loved about my job back then was I had to give presentations to the investigators or the physicians participating in the clinical trial.
Right.
How to take the sample, how to document, or how
Hmm.
to send the sample, blood sample, urine sample, whatever it was, how to send it in. And I loved that part of my job. I loved presenting, and I noticed all my colleagues didn't like that. They were very nervous, and I said, "Wow, this is great. I'll do it for everybody if you would like." I
Right.
made them fun. I made them entertaining. And then a company that I was working for through the CRO approached me and said, "We would like you to come and do and set up clinical trials for our company." And I
Okay.
said, "Nah, I'd like to do marketing." And they said, "Marketing? You don't know anything about marketing." And I said, "Nah, playing with PowerPoint, looks
Yeah.
pretty easy. I can do it." And they said, "No, if you want to do marketing, you have to do sales." And I said, "Sales?
Okay.
Okay, great." So I did sales
Right.
in the cath lab for a product, and
Yeah.
I became friends with everybody in the cath lab, in the hospitals, and I loved my job. I
Right.
loved being there in the
Again, no
hospital.
windows.
Huh?
Again, no windows.
No, well, there were other things to see.
Yeah.
And again, learning a lot. And it became very, very interesting. And I realized that sales is not just selling,
Yeah.
it's building relationships, it's providing solutions,
Yeah.
and it's really working to be part of the team in the hospital.
Right.
Then this was in a pharmaceutical company, and then I progressed into marketing, and they
Okay.
still had me doing some clinical trial stuff there, so they still got what they wanted. But then I we progressed into other things, and then I did sales management
Okay.
and managing a team here in Switzerland.
Hmm.
And then, this was a pharmaceutical company.
Right.
And the pharmaceutical companies, it's very difficult to change anything. You can't even change the color
Mm.
of the packaging.
Right.
It's very highly regulated. And the medical device always looked more attractive to me. And I took a jump into medical device, working for a company that was working with infusion pumps in the operating theater.
Right.
And there, I realized, wow, we can change things.
Yeah.
We can actually work with clinicians, with the anesthesiologists, and change things on the infusion pump. Amazing, totally new
Yeah.
experience for me.
What's great about that, John, is that that's actually, you were doing, there's pharma and med device in that cell, right? Because there's the actual chemicals that are going, or pharma products that are going into the patient, and also the device that's enabling that to happen, right?
That's right. That was a
Yeah.
great stepping stone into medical
Yeah.
device.
Yeah.
Can I ask
And
you,
it was a
John?
great go ahead.
You said the first thing was coincidence; it just happened. But this one you chose. Based on what did you make your decision for this company and to change for MedTech instead of pharma?
Well, I think it depends on the product. And again, as Cash mentioned, this was an opportunity for me to bring what I have as a pharmacist
Mm-hmm.
and my experience in a pharmaceutical company,
Yeah.
and then working with medical device. And I think this was the attraction for me. And this is what opened the door into medical device and also into the operating theater.
Right. Fantastic. Fantastic. But you said you fell into it a bit. Now, now you live in Switzerland and you're working out of Switzerland, right?
Right.
But our audience will hear that you don't have a very Swiss accent, right?
Right.
So,
I'm originally from the U.S.
all right.
And so
Okay.
I was born and raised, but now
Yeah.
I've lived most of my life in Switzerland. I speak
Right.
French and German,
Yeah.
and my mother is from here. So I grew up speaking French and English.
Oh,
And German I learned for tax purposes.
very important. Very important. So how did you progress then from, so you're doing these infusion pumps? Did you get to go to the site where they were being used and see them being attached to the patients? And were you involved
Yes.
in all of that? And what kind of problems did you have to help solve?
Well, so with the anesthesia, it was to
Yeah.
put the what we called guardrails at the time
Right.
to make sure that there are no errors because you can accidentally put the wrong infusion rate. And so it was very interesting then to collect a bunch of anesthesiologists, talk about this, determine the guardrails,
Mm-hmm.
and then work with the engineering team
Yeah.
in the company. And then, amazing, within 18 months, we had a new pump. So this you would never have in a pharmaceutical company. You cannot change anything.
No.
It's a very long process. So this was very exciting for me. And then from infusion pumps, I moved into management of the Swiss team for a company for wound care.
Oh.
And so I was managing the Swiss sales team. I was country manager.
Right.
And here I would like to point out that one advantage is being the outsider
Right.
because
Okay.
never underestimate the advantage of
Yeah.
being the outsider. So I'm
Right.
not Swiss German
Okay.
and I speak French like a Swiss, but still I'm an outsider.
Right.
And I could bring people together.
Okay.
The Swiss Germans and the French speakers, because I was the outsider, I was able to build the team.
Right.
I was not on anybody's side,
Okay.
and I was able to bring everybody together. So that was great,
That was a
and
fantastic learning that you had there, right?
that helped me in other places.
Yeah. Because
Never
in,
underestimate never underestimate the advantage, the value of being an outsider.
yeah, because
Would you think
sometimes,
it adds value that you ask many more questions, not pretending you know everything? And
yeah,
this is sometimes what I see in sales, that people pretend they know everything, but when you come as an outsider, suddenly you ask so many questions and you get so many new information.
Well, I also managed part of Germany and Switzerland as well. And as you know, Silke, between the Germans and the Swiss Germans, maybe there's a little bit of friction. Again, because I'm not German,
Yeah.
and I'm not Swiss German, but I speak German. I was able to bring everybody together. They couldn't say, "Oh, this guy from Germany," or "Oh, this guy from Switzerland." It was like, "Oh, this guy from we don't know where he's from, but
So
we'll work with him."
that's a
And
fascinating insight.
this is again, it's an advantage
Yeah.
in many places, not everywhere, but in many places.
Yeah. The fact that some people, because I hear that often as a disadvantage that I'm not from France or I'm not from Spain or wherever. But you've turned that around and used that to your advantage to develop a successful team and a successful business. Wow.
It's also true in the
Yeah.
in the region that I'm working right now.
Right. So
Uh,
tell us
I,
a bit about that then, because what
sure.
I've known you and what you are famous throughout the industry for is your work in med device in developing markets, right? I've always, when I've spoken to you, you're always either somewhere exotic or on your way somewhere exotic, right? Where sometimes people fear to tread. So that's what's always been so fascinating and is your pioneering work. So tell us a little bit about that and how you
Well,
got into this developing.
how I entered
Yeah.
it was also by accident.
Okay.
The
I think this is the most common answer we get in the interviews. It's all by accident.
All by accident.
Yeah.
They said this was in a company that I worked with you, Cash,
Yeah. Yeah.
before. Well, we worked in two different companies together. So the
Yes.
first
We
one,
have.
they said, "Hey, we need somebody to go to Turkey, to
Oh.
Turkey." And
Yes.
I said, "Sure, I'll go. And we need to do a market assessment. We have to work with the team." I said, "Sure, I'll go."
Yeah.
And this was by accident. That's where I ran and we went to a congress.
Yeah.
I ran into the other company. We started drinking coffee, Turkish coffee,
Yeah.
and you and I was working for the second company that you and I were working for.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I told them, "Listen, guys, I have no experience in this part of the world." They said, "That's okay.
Yeah.
We need somebody with the right attitude and willingness to travel to these new countries." Now, again, I've never been anywhere dangerous.
Right.
Well, people think I've gone to dangerous
Right.
places, but I've never seen anything dangerous.
Right.
I've been to many different countries, but I've never put myself in danger. However, you have to know what you're doing, and you
Yes.
don't take any risks.
Right.
And I enjoy it. But this part of the world has the richest countries in the world,
Yeah.
and the most unfortunately poorest countries in the world. But we have great opportunities. And I don't really like the word emerging markets because
Right.
I can share with you once I was in Saudi
Yeah.
and my business card said emerging markets. And they didn't like that very much
Yeah.
because they said, "Do you think Saudi is an emerging market?" And I said, "Oh, sorry, let's just cross that out."
Yeah. Exactly. It's a nuance that because you have got like some of the most, we're talking about Middle East and Africa here, right? And you've got some super developed countries, you
Sure.
do United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, but then yeah, in sub-Saharan Africa and there are some developing nations as well in developing markets where you've been absolutely instrumental in bringing some of the new technology and helping them leapfrog where they've been to some places, equivalent or beyond even what we can buy in Europe, right?
Well, so the Middle East, these countries like Saudi, the Gulf,
Yeah,
they're very well developed. And the advantage is their economies are very stable
right,
and they are investing a lot in healthcare. So these are booming markets for medical device.
right,
And then we have countries where they are pretty close to Europe, like South Africa. The healthcare system is closer to Europe on the private side,
right,
and you can also find similarities in countries like Turkey, uh, and uh, so there are many countries in the region that resemble developed countries,
right.
and then there are countries that are developing,
Yes,
and these countries are very interesting. And again, it's easy. Well, there's an advantage in being an outsider.
right,
I've been in countries in companies where they have a local office, and unfortunately, being a local person or even a person from another African country,
Yeah.
well, it's not that easy to go to another African country and say, this is what we should do.
Right.
Now, it's not something I like to brag about, but being a white, almost 2 meter tall, leather hair color
Yeah.
guy,
Very
when
true.
I go to a place, they say, who is that guy?
Yeah.
And it's easier to get a meeting
Right.
and it's easier for them to remember who I am. So, again,
Yeah.
being the outsider has been a big advantage. And I've gone to countries like Nigeria, Cote
Yeah.
d'Ivoire, Cameroon, and the contact has been very beneficial. And again, the advantage is being an outsider. But one thing I want to add
Yeah.
in these markets, many companies think that their products are not there.
Right.
And I can share with you,
Yeah.
Catch in
Yeah.
the company we worked in, the
Yeah.
second one,
Yes.
it said there's no sales in Nigeria.
Right.
And I said, well, let me try.
Yeah.
And I went to the first hospital in Lagos,
Yeah.
knocked on the door, and I said, "Hey, I'm here to show you some surgical staplers
Yeah.
and vessel sealing."
Yeah.
And they said, "Yeah, we have that." So I said, "Really?"
Yeah.
And I said, "But how?" And they
Yeah.
said, "We buy it from a guy in Dubai."
Oh,
I said, "Wow!"
yeah.
I
Great
priced
market.
it at
Yeah.
a very high price.
Yes.
And so the message for companies are: if you think your products are not there, think again.
Yeah.
If you're not there, somebody's doing it for you and they're making a lot of money.
Yeah. Interesting.
But John, is it possible in these countries that everyone is benefiting from these latest technologies, or are there certain groups of patients benefiting? What is the situation in these countries?
Well, so if I talk about in general, there's exceptions, but in general, there is a rising middle class.
Right.
And right now there is a lot of medical tourism, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because people are traveling for surgery to Dubai or to Western Europe or even to the US. This is very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, what about follow up? You come back home,
Yeah.
who's going to follow up with you? Nobody. And it's going to be very difficult if you have a post operative complication. The best solution is have that competency in the country. And this is what ministries of health are really interested in. They want to have the capabilities to do this type of surgery in country. Now you're always going to have the top 5% that are going to try to go somewhere else for the surgery.
Right.
But the goal is to train and to equip as many hospitals in these developing countries with the right solutions that they can start to do this type of medical care, surgeries, for example, for the rising middle class that can now afford it. Many of them have health insurance.
Yeah.
And so things are changing in these countries. And you have this willingness from many of the countries' ministries of health. Now, for the companies, it's a bit of a risk. You need to do some risk sharing
Right.
because we have to invest to train. We have to invest to bring the products into the country the formal way, not in through the back door as some of the agents are doing.
Right.
And this is a compromise that this is what we have to find the middle ground between companies
Yeah.
and the needs in the country.
I want to just step back a bit. I mean, what you've seen with such a variety of countries that you've been to, you must have seen all the different types of healthcare systems. I mean, if someone's just lived in one country, they're used to their own system in their own country, like, you know, the German system or the French or the NHS in the UK, right? Free at the point. But you must have seen, I mean, there's public healthcare systems, there's private healthcare systems, there's self-paying, where I've seen the patient has to go to the pharmacy, buy the products that are going to be used in their operation of their relative, and then carry that across to the OR and hand it to the OR staff, and insurance, right? So, any learnings, or what have you seen, and how have you seen this evolve?
Sure.
Yeah.
I've seen over the years we have seen big changes.
Right.
So many countries, if I look at Saudi,
Yeah.
Saudi has a great public and private medical system, and they have invested a lot of money into the infrastructure, training.
Mm-hmm.
10, 15 years ago, there were many, many foreign surgeons coming to work in Saudi. Now
Right.
they're less and less. There's a lot of now Saudi trained
Mm-hmm.
surgeons. So
Yeah.
if you ask me, this is one of the best public systems that I've seen, and this
Right.
has really evolved. And even if I go to other countries like South Africa,
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, the public system was not so good. Now things have really improved.
Right.
And again, it's down to training and making sure that the surgeons have access to the right tools.
Yeah.
South Africa, many of the surgeons are working on both sides of the public and private
Right.
sector.
Like in the
So,
UK.
like in the UK,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've seen some amazing hospitals in Turkey as well, and in Dubai. In some of these countries, they build the most impressive facilities with great equipment, etc. And one more question for me: do these health ministries in some of these countries, have you ever experienced? I mean, you must. I know you've been to see some of them. Have you experienced in helping them shape what their healthcare plans should look like in certain areas?
Sure, sure. So many of the ministries of health in the developing countries are open to dialogue,
Right.
and they're looking for partnerships. And well, some of them are looking for investment, local production, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or some type of infrastructure to be paid for in their country. But in general, they are very interested in programs like women's health
Right.
or oncology
Right.
or kidney. Now with dialysis, for example, this is a big push by ministries of health, and here they are willing to work with companies, and
Right.
it depends on which company, but many companies like the one that we worked for in the past,
Yeah.
they do have a good program of partnering with
Yeah.
ministries of health to see where they could work together to improve care.
So what a fascinating job to be able to see where you came out of that basement cellar without any windows. And then you're sitting in the Ministry of Health of a country discussing with them what their kidney rehabilitation, what their gynae program could look like in the next 5 to 10 years. That's pretty amazing, right?
It's again,
Yeah.
it's this the advantage of being the outsider,
Yeah.
because this is I really don't want to say I'm smarter than anybody or more clever. I've fallen into this situation,
Yeah.
and again, if somebody asked me how did you do this, and I think it's leveraging the advantage of being the outsider.
Right.
John, after you said you're an outsider, it all happened by accident. If someone is listening to this podcast and thinks, I would like to join John's team, who would get a job, who would get a chance to join your team? What's important for you when you hire in your team?
That's a good question. We talk about skills, we talk about knowledge, but really, what counts is attitude.
Right.
And the right attitude and willingness to learn and work as a team. This is probably the most valuable asset.
Yeah.
And communication. We have many people that are very skilled,
Yeah.
very highly, they know so much, but they're not good at communication. And
Right.
this, unfortunately, is a bit of a handicap for some people. This is a skill that can be developed, and I would encourage people to really work on communication. But again, attitude is really the best thing that we can hope for. We can teach skills,
Right.
we can teach knowledge, but attitude and willingness to get things done
Yeah.
and teamwork.
What
That's
about
great.
what about challenges? You must have encountered some challenges. I know, what I know of you, John, is you're a super positive person. I know when I'm feeling down, I give you a call, and I'm buzzing when I've finished talking to you. You exude that uh, positiveness about you. But you must have, come across some challenging situations. Can you think of any, and then
Well,
what you learned from that situation, how you managed it?
yeah, sure. In this part of the world,
Yeah.
the biggest challenge right now is supply chain.
Right.
Oh, this is a big challenge. Getting the products into the country and then
Yeah.
cost. How much is it going to cost
Right.
to ship the products to the countries? And the timelines are getting longer. The cost is going higher.
Yeah.
And then this adds more cost to the cost of the product or the technology that we're bringing into the operating theater. So
Right.
this is the biggest challenge that we're trying to fix, and we're not the only ones.
Right. And that
Do you
additional cost comes, sorry, so that additional cost comes from what? From importation taxes, or just it costs more to transport to a certain geographical region? What is that? I'm curious.
Well, the manufacturing costs have gone up,
Yeah.
but when it comes to shipping, we
Yeah.
try to ship as much by sea,
Yes.
and that has gone up in cost,
Mm-hmm.
and is very unpredictable. The delivery times, and so we've gone more towards air shipment, which is very expensive.
Yeah.
And so again, it's finding that balance between.
Yes.
It's kind of like an infusion pump. So
Yeah.
you have the long-term shipments by sea, but then the
Yes.
bolus by air,
Okay. That's a good analogy.
because the bolus is expensive, and but you need that.
Yeah.
We need to be reactive,
Yeah.
especially in a growing market. We
Yeah.
cannot predict. I have many people that say you have to put in a forecast for
Yeah.
24 months, and I said, guys, I don't know what's going to happen in 24 months.
have a crystal ball where you look
So
at?
we put in a forecast, but then we say, oh no, we need something now. And this is typical in the growing markets. We can't predict, and
Yeah.
and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. We're
Don't worry.
growing, and we have to deliver.
Next time you have to do that, I can send you my crystal ball that I use for
Yeah,
my
yeah,
for my forecast. I got to
yeah.
you.
John, are there any recent advancements or trends which you find interesting in the industry or in your specific region?
Well, for surgery,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very exciting what's happening with robotics,
Mm-hmm.
with AI. This is very exciting. And I've heard people say, well, this is for the developed countries. And I say, well, watch out, guys, because this is an opportunity to leapfrog.
Yes.
And we will have countries that will forget the standard laparoscopic surgery, for example.
Yeah.
Let's go for robotic. And it hasn't happened yet, but I'm very excited to see what happens.
What's
And I
fascinating?
put my
Yeah.
I put my bet on the Middle East, because they have
Yeah.
they have the investment, they have the capability, and let's
What
see what happens.
and what's interesting about some of the robots, with 5G coming in the connectivity, is that all of a sudden that surgeon that used to have to live in Saudi for a year now can be in Munich and operate on a patient in Saudi or in Cameroon or in Nigeria, right? So bringing the talents of some surgeons from Western world to via robotics, where the robot and the patient are in one geographical location and the surgeon and the controller is in another geographical location, and that's going to be a real game changer as well.
Right?
Not to say that they don't have homegrown talent and homegrown abilities, but for very specific cases, you can take
I
them
think
out
it's
of that.
also part of the skills transfer.
Yeah.
It's part of bringing those skills from those very experienced surgeons outside to
Yes.
the surgeons in the country.
Yes.
Communication, and with the AI and robotics, I think this will be a game changer.
It will.
And again, I don't think it's just for the Western world.
No.
I think we will see a revolution.
Yeah.
And just like with the landlines, there are no landlines in Nigeria. It's all
Yeah.
by
Mobile phone.
mobile phone. So
Also, I think it's an opportunity for hospital groups, that they have, if they want to buy now and develop hospitals in developing countries, right? But they can still use their assets back home, right? So, they have a top cardiac surgeon working out of Milan, but they own a hospital in Addis Ababa. Hey,
sure,
they can bring that level of knowledge and skill set to Addis Ababa without anyone getting on a plane, right? So sweat the
well
asset, bring that hospital brand to another area. Yeah,
that's a good point. Like MediClinic from South Africa, they
yeah,
own hospitals in the UAE,
yeah,
even Switzerland,
yes,
so they could consolidate those skills.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think that's going to be a massive revolution. The way we're going to start to use connectivity and AI. And I've had people talk about, yeah, but cross border. What if something happened to the patient? Who's legally
Insurance.
liable? Hospitals are like, yeah, we can figure that out. And that's not the issue, right?
I'm sure there are many roadblocks to cover.
Yeah,
Insurance, for example,
yeah.
uh, taxes. Where do you pay? Where do you pay for the surgery?
But from the hospitals I've spoken to, the hospital management, they're like, you don't need to worry about that. We can figure that out.
I
That's
think
not
so.
that's not the long pole in the fence, in the tent, right? Cool. Yeah.
John, with all your what you just mentioned, like AI, robotics, and all this, how do you keep yourself updated? Because there are so many new information in this industry, and it's for me not easy to find the right sources to keep myself up to date.
Well, when I'm not working on my 24-month forecast, I it's a challenge because
Yeah.
things are moving so fast.
Yeah.
But there are many sources,
Yeah.
uh, and it's actually the number one source that I enjoy is
Yeah.
being with surgeons,
Right.
and they are the ones that are telling me what's changing, and they point me in the right direction.
Hmm.
And being connected with them on LinkedIn and seeing what they're doing, and following their posts, this is a great way to keep up to date.
Yeah. Fantastic.
It's the same for me. I think LinkedIn is a real good resource for us to use, not only for networking, but also for educating ourselves. There are so many newsletters nowadays, so it's a real good tool. Huh?
And which countries would you say, hey, keep an eye on these countries? I mean, these countries are, in the next 3 to 4 years, you're going to see massive changes. What would you say to that?
Well, again, I think the countries to look at in this region
Yeah.
are in the Middle East.
Okay.
So Saudi and the Gulf,
Yeah.
because these are stable economies,
Right.
and their currency, most of them are pegged against the U.S. dollar.
Right.
So we don't have currency fluctuation. So and you have a very active government investing in these sectors.
Yes.
But one of my favorite countries is South Africa. Again, they have come
Yes.
a long way,
Yeah.
and I like to remind everybody the
Yeah.
first cardiac
Yeah.
transplant was in South
Exactly.
Africa,
Was in South Africa, in
and
Cape Town.
they in Cape Town
Yeah.
exactly,
In
and
Joburg, no?
No, in Cape
uh,
Town.
Or
Cape Town,
Pretoria? Cape Town?
Cape
in
Town.
Cape Town,
Yeah.
and
I
they
was in
have
that hospital, but I don't remember anymore what day of the week it was.
Yeah.
but they have an amazing.
Yeah.
My colleague watches MacGyver, and they say we are all MacGyver in South Africa, and we will find a way to innovate, whether we have the means or not.
Yeah.
And this is again one of my favorite markets
Yeah.
to see the spirit of innovation and also the government sector now picking up and changing a lot as well.
That's fascinating. So think back, think about where you are today, and that little 25-year-old. Well, you're not little, you're big. That
In the
25-year-old
cellar.
big guy, yeah, almost 2 meter high guy in the cellar, right? What do you know now that you wished that guy knew then?
Well, I think I would tell my younger self
Yeah.
to to be more open to taking risk.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
because there were many periods of my life where I didn't want to take risk,
Okay.
and I think I learned over the years take the risk,
Yeah.
and of course calculated risk. But
Yes.
I think we should, especially when you're young,
Take the
take the
opportunity.
risk.
Take the.
I can share with you a story. The first time I went
Yeah.
to South Africa
Yeah.
was the CRO company in Switzerland sent me there
Okay.
for a period of time. And then after a few weeks, they said, would you like to stay in South Africa? And there were four of us.
Yes.
And three of them said yes. Three of my colleagues said yes.
Yeah.
They stayed. And I, for some strange reason, I said, no, I want to go home. And I've always regretted that.
Yeah.
And maybe that experience made me take more risk in the future. But again, I learned that
Yeah.
we need to take risk. We need to be open to change,
Yes.
and life is an adventure.
Yeah. 100%. I had a similar experience. I early in my career, I got the opportunity to go to Pakistan
Yeah.
to the cardiac hospital in the north of Pakistan, which was also a military hospital, and the surgeons and the nurses were military personnel as well as medical practitioners. And I went into a meeting, and they're in full military uniform, guns strapped to their side, and we're sitting there drinking tea as you would at home and having medical. I was like, just looked around me for a minute and thought, what a fascinating, amazing, experience this is, right? And people, nurses were coming in and saluting, and it was just having worked in the NHS in London, it was just a fascinating experience, and I was so glad that I volunteered for that trip and I did it, and
Yeah.
yeah, and we managed to sell a system. Yeah,
Oh, that's great.
yeah. I also went to New Caledonia once,
Wow,
which
that's far.
which is I didn't realize how far away it is, right? But I will never forget that trip. That was absolutely incredible. Two hospitals on the island, and yeah, we got 100% market share
Wow,
in
great.
Caledonia.
And
That's far.
what I think is nice in these global
Yeah,
positions is that you also develop in your personal life, right?
yeah,
As you mentioned before, you get in contact with so many people and they all tell you the local stories and not, you don't only get the news from the TV, you really live with them
Yeah.
for for a while and see. That's really so exciting in this industry. And I find it always so funny that we now discuss post-COVID, should they all come back to the office or not? And I'm like, we have never been in the office, right? For us, we don't
Wow.
understand this discussion. But I must say it's also a challenge. And I mean, John, you have a team to manage a team, right? From the distance, because they are all in different countries and different time zones.
Oh,
So how do you do that?
communication. And this is the part I love about my job. I
right.
do travel to the countries. I go to see the customers with the team. We do a lot of HCP training. This is fun.
Yeah,
We have a lot of team meetings on the web, and we have, of course, one kickoff meeting during the year. But it's really the fun part is we have a platform. We share all of the experiences across the region. We have a training in Poland, great. We have a training in South Africa, great. We have a sales event in Saudi, that's great. And it's building this team. And we have also a lot of times on this platform, somebody asks a question. Well, have you ever seen this type of surgery with our products? And somebody will ask that question, for example, in Croatia. And then somebody in South Africa answers the question. I love that.
Yeah.
And
it's
when
incredible.
I go to the countries,
Yeah,
of course, the local country, they say, oh, John, please come to the office. We'll do a business review. And I say, guys, we can do the business review in the car on the way to see the customer
yeah,
because there's no sales in the office. I
no,
can tell you that.
yeah.
That's a good closing remark, right? There's no sales in the
In the
office.
office. No.
Yeah.
Get out there and you'll learn so much more. John, you've had an incredibly rich career. Long may it continue. You've helped thousands, probably over 1 million people with the work you've done over your career. It's so impressive. It seems like you have a lot of fun, which is amazing, and developing the talent of tomorrow.
Well, it's important to have a good team. And
Yes.
together with the team, we are unstoppable.
Yeah, I would encourage people who are listening to this to go to your LinkedIn, have a look at your posts and see the amazing places you've been and the stuff you do. I'm sure you're happy for people to reach out to you and ask
Sure.
questions. And so thank you so much for your time today. It's been
Super.
really amazing.
Thanks, Cash.
Thank,
Thanks, Silkid.
thank you so
You,
much.
thank you
So
so much.
for
Was
our
nice
audience,
catching up again.
absolutely,
Likewise.
absolutely. For our audience, don't forget to like and subscribe. However, what we really appreciate is if your thoughts and comments on today's episode and any further questions you may have you'd like to address, just ping them in below or send us an email, and we will love to get back to you. Thank you very much, John. All the best.
Thank
All
you.
right.